Hello, finance friends, and welcome to Personal Finance. My name is Eric Young. In the course of our time together, we're going to have a series of lectures that will take us systematically through the different decisions and tools and concepts that make personal finance what it is. In today's lecture, lecture one, we're going to start at the beginning. We're going to cover some basic ideas in finance. We're going to talk about the metaphor of a financial journey. And then we're going to learn about some tools like financial statements, financial plans, and a budget that will help you get from where you are today to where you want to be. So let's jump in. So the way that I like to think about personal finance is really, it's a journey. Like any journey, it's going to start off with where you are today. You're going to have a goal in mind of where you want to be. And then the planning of the journey is simply the steps that you're going to take to get from where you are today to where you want to be. It works when you're planning a trip, it works when you're planning your education, and it works when you're planning your financial future. So I'd like you to think about, over the course of our time together, think about personal finance as nothing more than a journey. And what we're going to do is learn the different tools, skills, concepts that will help us navigate that journey effectively. Okay, so keep in mind the journey. In this journey, the first step that you're going to want to take is to set your goals and decide where you want to get to. It's very funny because when most people think about personal finance, they're thinking about investing or the stock market, things like that. And that's a big part of it. But the reality is, when you think about it, the first step is almost like life coaching. And you have to be your own life coach because all personal finance starts with the idea of your goals. Where do you want to be in the future? One way that you can do this is to imagine. Close your eyes and imagine a version of you. We'll call this beautiful person future you. Imagine this future you at some point, years, decades from now. What do you want future you's life to be like? If you can think deeply about that question and really ask yourself, what do I want for my future self? You're well on your way to setting goals. And that's the big thing, because the first step in any personal financial class should be you thinking about your goals. Because the big idea here is we're not doing personal finance with money as the end result. We take on all these different things so that we have a way to finance the life that we want to live. Hopefully a big, beautiful, bold life. Okay? So step one, you're going to think about your goals. The second step that you're going to do is you're going to assess your current situation. There's a series of questions that I'll take you through, and those questions will help you to figure out, where am I right now? Both in terms of my actual material status, how much money do I have, as well as your knowledge status. What's my comfort level with basic personal financial concepts? So again, step one, you're going to set your goals to decide where you want to be in the future. Step two, you're going to assess your current situation and figure out where you are right now. And then once you have that, then all the rest is just the roadmap. Once you know where you are now and where you want to be, you can just create a roadmap to get you there. And personal finance is your roadmap. Okay? Now, when you take this journey and extend this metaphor, what you can also see is that the goals that you set form the purpose and the rationale for your financial plan. Your financial plan is basically your roadmap. So you should all be thinking about writing a personal financial plan. A lot of people stress over that, but you don't need to stress over that, because the goals that you set, that forms the basis, the rationale for your roadmap, for your plan. Seen another way, if you have really well thought out goals, your plan will help you to align your day-to-day living and the decisions that you make with your goals. Okay, so it all kind of comes together, this idea of the journey. You're going to think of a financial plan. It's going to be rooted in the goals that you set. And more importantly, the financial plan will give you some alignment so that your day-to-day decisions will align with your long-term goals. And in that alignment, that's where you get that feeling of growth and success as you go along your financial journey. Okay? So let's talk about these things briefly. The first step, obviously, is to set your goals. Now, I challenge you to think a little bit broadly, maybe more broadly than you thought about your goals. When you look around, modern society seems to be pretty obsessed with financial wealth and with consumption. And of course, I teach personal finance, so I have no problem with wealth or consumption. Clearly, having wealth is important. But I really want to push you and make you think that while wealth is important, it's equally important that you start thinking about deeper questions. More spiritual, maybe, questions, more theological questions, if that's your nature, but deeper questions. Things like, what's the type of life that you want to actually live? What are the values that are important to you and that you want to abide by in your daily life? And, sadly, knowing that our time here is finite, what's the legacy that you want to leave behind? Okay, wealth is important, certainly, but there's deeper questions, and I don't think that they're separate. In fact, I think what we really get to, the way that I teach this class and the approach that I would encourage you to take, you have the permission to define what wealth means for you. So to think about that question. When you think about being wealthy, having a wealthy, prosperous life, what does that mean to you? The beauty is you get to answer this question any way you want. The flip side of that is you have to answer that question. And it's a tough question to answer because it really pushes you into deeper ideas about what you value, what you hope to achieve, what's important to you as a person. Okay? There's a quote by a guy named Dr. David Myers, and it says here, he wrote, "Wealth is like health. Although its absence can breed misery, having it is no guarantee of happiness." And I put that quote there because I wanted you to have something to anchor you as you start thinking about setting your goals, the first step in your journey. Now, sometimes when students are first learning about personal finance, they sort of struggle. What are some common goals? Like, what should I be thinking about? What's a framework or a lens? So I put here a handful of common financial goals that people have. So here's some common ones. A big goal that many people have is to achieve financial independence, and tied to that, achieve financial security. There's something to be said for never having to be afraid about your financial situation. You get freed from a lot of stress if you have your finances under control and you can say, I'm financially independent and I'm secure. Okay, it's a good goal. Of course, it leads to another decision, another question. What does independence and security mean to you? And that, of course, goes back to the type of life that you want to live. Another goal that many people have is the dream of a retirement. And that's a great goal as well, very common goal, something that many people save toward. Of course, there are other questions involved. When do you want to retire? And once you decide to retire, what kind of lifestyle would you like? Would you like to keep up your current life? Would you pare things down? Do you want to expand it? So again, you have big goals, but they're rooted in personal decisions and personal values. Some of the other common goals that people have, the goal to own a home, very, very big goal that people have, home ownership, not having to rent, having your own little piece of property, your thing. Maybe starting a business, another popular goal. Entrepreneurship is a very popular major for a reason. The idea of being their own boss and of creating something that provides both freedom and generates value for society, very appealing goal. If you're going to have children, educating your children is a very common goal. And we're going to learn that there's lots of tools, including one called a 529 plan that you can put together to make that goal a reality. Other big goals include, very broadly, making major purchases. Those, they're not frequent. They're expensive. Things like cars, your home, maybe a rental property. These are very big capital expenditures, something that you can't just decide on a whim. You have to really think it through, have a plan, save the money to do it. That's a very common goal. Other goals include, for many people, and this one's tied again to the security goal, building up some emergency reserves. Having an emergency fund, a rainy day fund where you keep some money so that if a bad thing happens, you blow out a tire in your car, at your home, your water tank bursts, you get sick, you lose your job, so that you're able to keep your composure and navigate through it. Okay, so building emergency reserves, very important goal, because ultimately having emergency cash, something stored away in that rainy day fund, gives you the freedom to not be afraid. Clearing debt can be a big goal, especially for students who may be graduating with a lot of student loan debt or maybe even credit card debt. The idea of saying, I want a clean slate, I want to clear this burden, very important, very common goal. Taking a vacation, going somewhere nice, lifelong learning through travel, very common goal. And for a lot of people, maybe you, there's also goals that extend beyond your time on earth, so that when you're dead, leaving money to a charity, leaving money to beneficiaries, family, friends, loved ones, so that they can prosper, another very common goal. So again, the challenge before you is to set some financial goals. Here's some examples, some common ones that many people set. Once you start sitting down to really think through your life and set your goals, few things might help you. So here's some tips. Okay, tip number one, begin with your life vision. Ideally, there's some alignment between the type of life that you want to live, the things that you value, and the goals that you set. Your goals should always flow from your life vision, because your life vision guides you, and the goals just align your material capabilities with those big visions. Another tip that I would offer to you are in terms of how to think. I encourage you to always think about things that you can do. And that's a very common thing. People start a goal. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to save more money. A lot of goals are things that people want to do. But I would encourage you, while thinking of that, it's important. There's also value in thinking about things that you're not going to do. You can achieve great success by setting goals, and those goals could include things to do, or maybe we'll say things to start. But you can get just as much value sometimes by setting goals of things you're not going to do, things that you want to stop doing. I would also encourage you, when you're thinking about your goals, to differentiate between what we might call end goals and process goals. I'll give you an example. Maybe your end goal is to lose a certain amount of weight, or save a certain amount of money, or run a marathon in a certain number of months, whatever it is. An end goal is what you want to achieve. And those are good goals. Many financial goals that we discussed a moment ago are in fact end goals. But I want to also encourage you to think about process goals. Because the reality is sometimes it's kind of hard to control the end. And especially when the end goal might be decades ahead, saving for retirement, for example, that's really abstract, and it's hard to get your head anchored to something that might be decades away. So therefore, I think there's a lot of value in process goals. To give the example, you say, okay, I want to lose a certain amount of weight in a certain number of months. That's a good end goal. But maybe a process goal is, I'm going to start doing a few things or stop doing a few things in the next day or two. Maybe your goal is, I want to run a marathon in a certain number of months. Great end goal, very common end goal. But maybe the process goal is, every day I'm going to train for this many minutes. The difference between end goals and process goals becomes a bit more evident when you think that a lot of times you might not have total control over the end goal, especially when it's maybe decades away. You'll have a lot more control over the process. And what you find is oftentimes pursuing the process and getting good at the process, what we're going to call here developing good habits, gives you benefits that go far beyond your original end goal. One of the greatest books you can read if this interests you is a book called Atomic Habits by a guy named James Clear. And a quote in that book that I really liked, Mr. Clear wrote, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems." And what he was saying there is ultimately all we have are the systems that propel us as individuals. Of course, systems can be seen as habits. So to take this back to our number 3 here, of course, dream big and have great, bold, beautiful end goals, but don't neglect building up the habits, the systems, the processes that get you there. And then the final thing that I would encourage you on this slide, many of you might have heard the idea of SMART goals, very popular acronym. SMART goals are defined as goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Fantastic, good stuff. But I don't think that's enough. In fact, I would encourage you, as you're thinking about setting your goals, to go beyond SMART and ask yourself a couple of other questions. First question is, why are these goals important to me? I mean, you could have a SMART goal and you can develop a goal that has specific metrics, that's measurable, achievable, etc. But if you haven't thought about, why do I want this? How will my life be better by achieving this goal? It's going to be hard to get to. So think about your SMART goals, but go a step further. Dig a bit deeper and ask yourself, why are these goals important to me? What are some of the obstacles or constraints that might get in my way? A lot of people will set SMART goals. They don't ever think about contingency plans. They never think, well, what about the obstacles? And at the sign of the first obstacle, they just give up. Okay. You have to think, I have these goals. They're important to me. And here's some things that might get in my way. Here's some barriers that might block me. The better you can do to anticipate and think about those obstacles, the better you can plan for them. And you'll be far more likely to achieve those goals. And then again, as we said earlier, what are the habits and systems that you can build? You want to build habits, you want to build systems, you want to think about processes that you can build that will push you toward that goal. Okay? So with that said, I would encourage you at some point in the near future, let's start doing this. Take out a pen or a paper, digital, paper, analog, whatever it is that you do, and start thinking. It's usually a good idea to do this by yourself so that you don't get embarrassed. You can dream big. You can put down all of your crazy, wacky goals. That's okay. This is a list that nobody has to see, so you can be bold and dream big. But you got to start doing it. And I would encourage you to start writing down the goals that you want to achieve. Then from there, you put some time frames, some due dates on those goals. Those due dates might be short term. They might be medium term. You may have a few long-term goals in there. That's fine. But you got to put some time frames on that. That helps you sort of prioritize it and kind of lay out your process map. And then, because this is a class in personal finance, once you've got your goals written, you need to put some dollar amounts on those goals. What will this cost me? I want to take a vacation to Italy. Great. When? What will it cost you? Maybe one day you marry, you have children. You say, we want to pay for our kids' college education. Fantastic. What do you think that will cost you? If you can put time frames and dollar amounts on really bold, creative, and beautiful goals, you're well on your way to being financially successful, and we haven't even talked about investing yet. Okay, so that's goal setting. I will offer you this final thing on goals, I believe. Yeah. If you were stuck on what are some goals that you should start on right now, I would respectfully offer you two. The first goal that I would encourage you to focus on is to start thinking about and saving for your retirement ASAP. If you're already employed, that means now. And if you're still in school, that means the day you get your job. It is never too soon to start thinking about your retirement. What are some steps that you might take to achieve this goal? Well, you could start by opening up a retirement account. There's a lot of these, and we're going to learn about them in our time together. These would be things like IRAs, traditional IRA or Roth IRA, a 401k plan, a 403b. There's a lot of alphabet soup and number soup out there. There's a lot of options, and we'll sort through them and we'll learn all about them. But open one up once you're eligible. And then once you open it, start investing enough in those to build a portfolio up. This is especially the case if you have a job, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but we'll learn about this. If you have a job where your employer offers a 401k or a 403b plan, these are retirement plans that are offered by your company. If you happen to work for a place that offers those, one of the great things about them is oftentimes the employer gives you either a full or a partial match on the money that you contribute. Think about that. You set up this retirement plan and you contribute money for your future self. In some of these plans, your employer will actually match your contribution, maybe in full, maybe in part. But it sort of amounts to free money in a way. So you want to take advantage of that. And because we're humans, and it's very easy to say that we're going to do things and then forget because life happens, set up an automated system so that without thinking about it, you invest. That's my first suggestion. And then my second one, and this starts right away, start building up your own personal rainy day fund, because you never know when life might throw you a curveball. And it's nice to have a little bit of cash. We call it cash. We can also call it liquidity. Having some cash or liquidity behind you is a good thing. You might want to start by striving for 6 to 12 months of your living expenses. Okay. Later on in the class, we'll learn about how you can save that money, where you can put that money, probably an online high yield savings account. And of course, we'll learn some steps primarily through automated contributions to how you build up to that. Okay, so if you have no other ideas for goals, maybe these are two big financial ones. Start thinking about your retirement now and start building up that emergency fund for the rainy day. Okay, now you have your goals. The next step is to assess your current situation. Okay, the goals are the destination that you want to achieve. The current situation is where you are right now. Okay, so you want to figure out where you currently are. I think that this has two distinct components. Obviously, most people would say, where are you currently financially? How much money do you have in the bank? Do you have any credit card debt? Do you have an IRA account with some investment money? Things like that. That's true. But I also think that your current situation, especially for those of you who are sort of new to personal finance, is also in terms of your situation, in terms of your current knowledge. Now, I have some questions that I'm going to share with you that will help you do that. Here's some right here. And this page will be on the website, so you can access it at any time. But since step one, again, is to figure out where you are right now, step one was your goals. Step two is to figure out where you are now. Here's some basic questions that might kind of take you through it. I won't go through all of them, but here's a few. Right now, what is your net worth? What's your financial assets minus your liabilities? What are you worth right now in financial terms? In any given month, are you overspending? Are you running a deficit? or a surplus. We call this determining your cash flow. What kind of accounts do you currently have? Okay, there's a lot of other things right here. Do you currently have an emergency fund? Do you know how taxes work? Do you have any debt? If you have debt, how much do you have to pay every month on that? Do you have any investments right now? And if you do you understand them? Did you get into something and you understood what that was? Or did you just get into it and just sort of get into it and not know what it was? That's fine too. And then even this, if you were to look at yourself, do you feel like you have a good, healthy relationship with money? Okay. Notice that none of these are strictly, well, some are financial, but these are really knowledge. So what's your current knowledge base? That's a good way to assess your current situation. Another way to assess your current situation is through the idea of financial statements. Companies keep financial statements. Corporations, the government keeps them, maybe not good ones, but they keep them too. So just like a private firm or a company, you should probably get in the habit of doing financial statements. They're very simple, they don't take long to do, and they give you really good knowledge about your current situation, okay? I want to introduce to you right now a metaphor that's going to stick with us over the course of our time together. And that is tools for the job. We've mentioned that you want to have goals where you want to get to. You have where you are right now. You're going to craft that journey to get you from where you are to where you want to be. One of the metaphors that I want you to keep in mind is ultimately, personal finance is just selecting tools to get the job done. Ideally, I shouldn't say tools. How about we're going to say good personal financial decision making is finding the right tools to get the job done. Now, of course, the question is, well, what job do you want to get done? And that depends on your goals. I want to have $1 million in my investment account. I want to have a vacation to Europe. I want to pay for my godson's college. Whatever goal you have, all personal finance really is, what the bulk of my lectures with you will really be, are discussing tools to get those done. The first set of tools that I want to introduce you to are personal financial statements. And this is a tool that will help you to make sense of your life and to start thinking critically about money, where you bring it in from, where it goes out to. Okay, they're really a good discipline to get into, and they're very helpful. Okay, so there's actually, if you think about it, 4 financial statements. We're going to cover these 2 specifically. A spending journal is actually a good tool. You track your spending, but you're going to learn in a bit, your spending journal just flows up into your cash flow statement. And a budget is also an essential tool in your financial arsenal. A lot of people are afraid of budgets. It's like a dirty word that people don't want to hear, but they're not hard to do. And really, I don't even call them budgets. It's a wealth creation plan. That's all a budget is. It's just a way to kind of predict your money that comes in, your money that you spend, in an effort to achieve your goals and build wealth. So don't be taken aback by the idea of a budget. In fact, don't even call it a budget. It's a wealth creation plan. It's a success creation plan. It's a life plan, okay? Empowers that. So we're going to focus on 1 and 2, the balance sheet and the cash flow statement. All of these statements collectively provide to you a lot of goals. They're a really important thing to do. They're very boring. They can be, I guess, at times seem tedious, but for the amount of time they have to put into them, which isn't much, they provide a lot of benefit. They're going to help you to track your progress, figure out if you're on the right path. If you have some financial issues, your financial statements will help you to identify those issues early on, and thereby spot opportunities to fix things, to course correct. Financial statements, if you treat them correctly, not in a judgmental way, not in a way to feel bad about yourself, but they provide you information on the good, the bad, and the ugly of your financial life. And again, sometimes it's hard. You say, oh, that's embarrassing. I don't want to realize, I don't want to write down, oh, I have all that debt, or I'm embarrassed I overspent this month. I don't want to do it. We don't judge ourselves here. We just get this information as a tool to improve ourselves. We're all going to make financial mistakes. I teach this stuff and I still make them. Don't get mad at yourself. Love yourself, forgive yourself, learn from your mistakes, and just keep on your journey. Okay. And these help you. These will help you to see, of course, where your money comes from and where it goes to. This is important because we said earlier that you want to have a series of goals that are based on your values. Well, when you're spending money, is the money that you're spending actually supporting your goals? Is it actually contributing to you achieving your goals and living out your values? And that could be a difficult thing to look at. But you want to look at that because we want to get that alignment between our spending and our goals and our life vision and our values. And your financial statements are a tool to help you do that. And then finally, because life can throw some curveballs, financial statements will help you to anticipate and plan ahead for your cash needs. And you have a much better chance of getting through tough times if you have these financial statements in place. These also, and I think this is the other big part. One of my goals in this class, again, help you learn about the tools for the job, but I also want you to be thinking with the financial mindset, to be asking questions that reflect a financial mindset. And they're not hard questions. It's about reflection and introspection. And what these financial statements will do is they'll help you to answer a handful of questions that will make sure you're on the right path. Question number one, am I actually on the right track toward my goals? I'm taking down my spending. I'm tracking my progress. Am I getting closer to achieving my goals or not? Question number two, in the immediate future, how can I increase my cash flows? How can I generate more net cash so that I can put that toward my goals? In a longer perspective, longer time frame, how can I increase my net worth? Another reflective question, this is sort of playing defensive here, defensive game. If life threw me some challenges or maybe some opportunities, would I be prepared for them? Do I have proper insurance? Do I have proper savings so that if something bad happened, I can weather that storm? Do I have enough cash saved so that if all of a sudden there was a great opportunity, I could take advantage of it? And then finally, because ultimately this is all about values and goals, am I spending money on things that bring me value? Okay, so these are some of the benefits of these financial statements. We're going to cover two. The first one is your personal balance sheet. Now, probably the best way to learn it is to actually look at one. So I've made up one here for you. It's a hypothetical one, fictitious, just a bunch of numbers that I put together, but the categories are what really matter. Okay, couple things on this. So this is a mock-up. And again, this PDF will be on the website, so you can look at it, reference it. First thing to understand is that the balance sheet is what we're going to call a snapshot document. It's like a photograph. It captures your financial status at a particular point in time. Usually, that's the last day of the month or the last day of the quarter or the last day of the year. So I made these effective April 30th. So this is a balance sheet effective the last day of April of 2024. And what this balance sheet shows you is, if this were yours, where do I stand? What is my financial situation on this date in time? You will see that the balance sheet has three big sections. Section 1, assets. Section 2, liabilities. Section 3, net worth. Your assets are anything that you own that has monetary value. Okay, the idea of assets is a really big idea in personal finance. So an asset is simply anything that you own that has monetary value. Notice that assets can store value. Assets can also generate income. So if you put your money into a bank, you can store value there, and your bank account is an asset. If you own a rental property, that's going to generate rent. So assets can generate income, they can store value. Okay. I'm going to divide our assets into three subcategories: liquid assets, personal possessions, and investment assets. Liquid assets, in finance, the idea of liquid basically means close to cash. Liquidity is a term that we use in finance to talk about how close an asset is to cash. Cash, of course, would be perfectly liquid because cash is cash and it's liquid. Okay. So if you notice on the assets, we're going to go from more liquid assets to less liquid. Okay. This is the standard way that we do it. We go assets and then we start with liquid, then possessions, then investments. The idea being the farther down you go, the less liquid you are. That's just the convention in finance and accounting. There's no necessary, there's no real reason that you have to do it that way, but that's just the convention and it works really well. Okay. So your liquid assets would include the cash you have on hand and maybe any balances in checking accounts or savings accounts or CDs. Boom. Personal possessions are all the things that you have that have monetary value. Your car, maybe collectibles. If you have a home, your home, real estate is a personal possession. And then finally, investment assets. And this is all the money that you have socked away that's hopefully growing and generating wealth and growing your portfolio for one day when you later need it. Some people would ask, why are investment assets put down at the bottom? Aren't they a bit more liquid than your car or your house? And the idea is, yeah, you can probably sell your stocks real quick, but we tend to want to consider investment assets to be, at least while you're working, not liquid because you don't want to touch them. You want to leave those alone until you're ready to retire. Okay. So that's the way you're going to do it. Notice that up on this asset side, for each of these categories, liquid, personal, and investment, we have a series of categories with the amounts that you had in that account or in that category on April 30th. We're going to get subtotals for each one. And then those subtotals add up to your total. Okay. So again, you're going to break this up into your categories. Are the assets going to be, let's do this one more time, liquid, and then personal, and then investment? Under each of these three big categories, you're going to have individual entries for all the assets that are in that category. And then you're going to find the balance in each of those. You're going to have subtotals, and those subtotals will add up to this line right here, which in this case would be total assets. Total assets is, as the name suggests, the sum total of all of your asset base. The second section is liabilities. Much like we had subcategories under assets, we also have subcategories under liabilities. Those subcategories would be, number one, current liabilities, and number two, long-term. These are organized from the ones that are due soon to ones that are due later. Current liabilities are liabilities that you have that are generally payable, that are going to be due within like a year or so. Long-term liabilities will be due longer than a year. So just like we organize our assets from the most liquid to the least liquid, we organize our liabilities from the ones that are due the soonest to the ones that are due later. For most people, maybe you, Current liabilities would include credit card balances. You have to make payments on those. Maybe a doctor or dentist or other bills that are due soon. And your long-term liabilities would be really your big ticket things. Student loans, car loans, a mortgage, things that are usually way bigger amounts. And because they're bigger amounts, are due over a long period of time. Once again, here we're going to have our categories and the individual entries. We're going to have subtotals, and then we're going to have our total. And this total here is our total liabilities. And now that we have our assets and our liabilities, we can put it all together and get the magic number. And one of the most important things that you're going to want to focus on in your financial journey, and that is your net worth. And your net worth is simply equal to your assets minus your liabilities. That's your net worth. It's basically a reflection of everything that you own, your assets, minus everything that you owe, your liabilities. If you have a positive net worth, it means that you own stuff that is worth more than what you owe to other people. If you have a negative net worth, that means that you owe more money than you currently have. Okay? One of the big goals is going to be to grow your net worth over time. So that's your net worth statement. Just as a quick recap, it lists all the assets that you own and the liabilities that you owe out. Again, your net worth is equal to the difference between them. And again, this is a snapshot document. It's effective on one particular date at one particular point in time. Okay? We learned that assets, that's cash or property. It's things that you own. Remember that assets can store value. Assets can also generate income. It is good to have them. And we're going to break them down into categories going from the most liquid to the least. Here I actually, in the other one I gave you 3. Here I did 4 because I gave real property, which would be houses that you own or rental property. I gave them their own separate line. But once again, we're going from the most liquid to the least liquid. One big question that comes up is when you're doing, when you're doing your cash flow statement, where do these numbers here come from? Where do the values for your assets come from? Well, obviously, if it's like a checking account balance or a CD balance or even an investment portfolio balance, that's very easy. Look at your app, log into the website and get your balance. But for your personal possessions, collectibles, your car, your guitar collection, all those different things, you're going to want to value them at their fair market value. Fair market value is what they are currently worth. You do not want to value them at the price you paid for them. Because the reality is, for many assets, they suffer from what we call in finance depreciation. And depreciation is the process in which an asset over time loses money. Cars, for example, unless it's a collectible car, but your typical everyday car, it depreciates in value rapidly. If you're going to put your car on your net worth statement under your assets, you do not want to put the price that you paid for the car. You have to put its fair market value, what we call its FMV, because if you had to sell it today, that's what it's worth. Okay? Liabilities, we said, are what you owe, and they're going to be broken down into 2 categories. Current, which again is due within a year, and long-term liabilities, which are due more than a year out. Once again, we're organizing here from the most recently due, or from the most soon to be paid to the farthest to be paid. Okay, and those are your liabilities. One more thing about liabilities. We had set up here that assets were things that you own that generate value, that have either store your wealth, generate income, things like that. I want you to really consider what a liability is. It's money that you owe, which makes sense. You know, you have a credit card balance, you got to pay it. You have a student loan, you have to pay it. Fantastic. But if you really think about it, a liability represents a claim that somebody else has on your future income. When you have debt, when you have liabilities, when you owe money, somebody else, not future you, somebody else has a claim on your future income, which means that if you have significant amounts of debt, if you owe a lot of money, you don't get the full benefit of your future earnings because somebody else has a claim on that. Now, I'm not going to say right now that's a good or a bad thing, but this is how we think about things in personal finance. This is what the intro to financial thinking means. You start looking at assets and liabilities a little bit differently and asking with these better definitions, how do these things fit into your future? And then, of course, the big thing here is your net worth. And your net worth is your total assets minus your total liabilities. It is, at least in the lens of personal finance, one of the key benchmarks of your financial health. And therefore, one of your big goals in your personal financial journey should be to grow your net worth, to increase that number over time. Slowly, day by day, month by month, year by year, years become decades. Your goal is to systematically increase that net worth over time. Now, of course, the question is, how do you do it? Well, if you think about it, if your net worth is in fact your assets minus your liabilities, there's only really two ways that you can increase your net worth. Either A, you can increase the amount of assets that you own, or B, you can decrease the liabilities that you owe. That's the only way to get wealthy. By definition, that's the only way to grow your net worth. You have to make decisions that allow you to either increase your assets or decrease your liabilities. Okay? And that takes us to our second of our statements, and that's the personal cash flow statement. And once again, the best way to do it is the best way to learn it is just to do one. So I put together here a fictitious cash flow statement. First thing to point out, the cash flow statement is a flow document, okay? Whereas the balance sheet was a snapshot document, effective as of, I think it was April 30th. The flow document, it spans the time period. So the cash flow statement is a flow document. It records activity over the course of a period of time, not where you stand on one particular date, okay? The basic components of a cash flow statement include your cash income. From there, you get your total income. So your income is the money that comes into you from all your sources. It might be from your job. Maybe you have interest at a bank. Maybe you get some dividends from a stock. One day when you're retired, you'll get Social Security payments or pension payments. All of those are sources of income, okay? So your income from all your sources adds together, and that becomes your total income. In this case, $6,710 for the month. Now, once you have your income, as you know, you don't get to keep it all because the government's going to want to get a piece of it in the form of taxes. So you're going to start off with your cash income. And then you're going to have all your different taxes and deductions. So if you live in California, for example, you're going to pay, if you work, you're going to be paying some federal income tax, some California income tax, some federal Social Security and Medicare, what we call FICA, which we'll learn about later, and even California SDI. A lot of taxes. And we'll have a lecture on taxes, and we'll actually learn how to do how to prepare your own taxes in a couple of weeks. But for now, you take all of your total income from here, you then subtract all of your taxes, and the number that's left is what we call disposable income. Disposable income is income that you have at your disposal that you can actually spend once you've taken care of all of your tax obligations to the feds and to the state. Now, once you got the taxes paid, then you got to pay for your own living. And we're going to categorize your living expenses as either fixed or variable. You don't have to do this. I like to do it. It works for me. You don't have to. A lot of people do, though. These are both in green, your living expenses, the amounts that you spend on a day-to-day basis to get through your life. Okay? Notice that we can break these down into fixed. A fixed expense, like your rent or your mortgage payment, your cell phone bill, your gym bill, your subscriptions, whatever it is, all of those fixed expenses tend to stay the same every month. They recur monthly at the same number. I like to put my fixed expenses and have a fixed total here because that is something that I can predict. And I know, hey, at minimum every month, this person, for example, is looking at $2,085 that they have to bring in because that money has to be paid out, okay? The other category would be your variable expenses. These are still expenses, but the numbers are going to vary. Some months they may be bigger, some months they may be less. These would include things like, food and grocery expenses, any automobile expenses, gas, washing, maintenance, all your personal expenses, entertainment, books, supplies, things you need for your health, personal care, all those items. Utility payments that, for example, you have to pay at your apartment or your home. Maybe you travel, maybe you give a gift or two. All of those expenses that don't occur predictably in the same amount every month are variable. If you notice here, I break it down and we get a subtotal and a subtotal. And this leads us into our next one. So we'll go back to blue. That's income after living expenses. You notice that after taxes, you had $5,746 in disposable income. You had $2,085 in fixed expense, FC for fixed cost. You had $2,452 in variable cost. The difference between your disposable income and your living expenses, in this case, was $1,209. We're going to call this your income after living expenses. You really, really, really need this number to be a positive number. If that number, you can have an occasional month if you have an unexpected expense, it happens. You can get through that. But if that income after living expense line is negative every month, you've got a bit of a big problem and you've got to get that big problem fixed because you cannot sustain that way. Now, once you have your living expenses, then you have to add in any debt obligations that you have. Are you making monthly payments toward to any debt that you have, student loans, mortgages, anything like that? Maybe you took out a big loan for a car, whatever it is. You put your debt obligations here, and then the number that's left over is your free cash flow. Okay, so your income after living expenses minus any debt obligations, that's what we're going to call your free cash flow. You want that free cash flow to also be positive. Also, notice here, you can see the impact that debt has on your financial situation. Debt ultimately reduces your free cash flow. Now you're saying, Eric, why is free cash flow so important? Well, because we get to our last big category, and that's this one. Investment and capital expenditures. Setting aside money for future you. Putting money away, deferring gratification today so that future you can have a great life down the line. You need to save, you need to invest to do that. But by definition, you can only invest. Sorry, let me undo that. By definition, you can only invest if you have free cash flow. If you run negative free cash flow numbers, you can never invest and you'll never grow your net worth. And future you will be deprived of the chance to live its full best self. Okay, so that's our connection. And then finally, when we're all done and we've set aside money to pay ourselves first, by the way, PYF. Another big theme in this class, we've learned earlier about tools for the job. Another big theme, PYF, PYF, pay yourself first. Future you, that beautiful version of yourself that's waiting for you decades ahead, that person who deserves and wants a great life, that person has to be your best friend. Future you has to be more important than your landlord, more important than AT&T or anything else. So before you pay anything, you should really be focusing, I've got to be able to pay future me. But that means that you have to have positive free cash flow. Now, once you pay future you, if there's any money left over, this is a good thing. Now you have net cash flow. And with this net cash flow, you can do lots of cool things. Basically, with net cash flow, what can you do? Well, you can either use that free net cash flow to buy more assets or use it to pay down your liabilities. Grow assets or reduce debt. And that, my friends, was how we defined growing your net worth. Okay, so let's go back to this. The personal cash flow statement, as we said, it shows the money that you bring in and the money that you send out. We can call those cash in and cash out, or inflows and outflows. And again, it's during a period of time. We know that net cash flow is going to be equal to the money that comes in minus the money that goes out. Okay, this is a flow document, so it measures over a period of time, not a single point. And the real big takeaway, what this cash flow statement is really telling us is, if future you wants to be successful and if you want to be financially set later in life and be able to achieve these great goals that you're going to set, one of your primary goals, another mantra, another little motto, the right tool for the job, pay yourself first. Here's another one. NCF positive. You must strive to run net cash flow positive. This means that the money that you bring in must be more than the money that you spend out. What this means, my friends, is you have to live within your means. You cannot overspend. Overspending is tempting, and there's a lot of commercial temptation, social media temptation, advertising temptation to spend, spend, spend. I know it's hard, but you have to be thinking about, if that spending gets you net cash negative, that's bad news. Okay? What's so important about net cash positive? Well, notice if you are net cash positive, what you can do. By the way, notice that the word can is intentional. It implies options. Because if you're net cash positive, you can increase your assets, you can decrease your liabilities, You can even buy some stuff if you want, if it brings you value. You have options. It's a good thing. But suppose that you decide we'll go to red. Suppose that you decide that you're going to overspend, that you're going to spend beyond your means. You're going to spend more than you earn. That's going to be net cash negative. That, of course, is a bad thing, because if you're net cash negative, first of all, notice that we change from can to must. If you're net cash negative, there's no more options. You have to make some decisions. And the only ways to do it, well, number one, you can borrow the money, but that increases your liabilities, which lowers your net worth. And owing money, as we said before, means that somebody else has a claim on your future earnings. So that's not good. Or if you're running net cash negative, you can dip into your savings account, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because maybe you're saving for a bigger goal. And if you dip into your savings account, your savings goes down, your assets fall, your net worth falls. Or third, which is also not great, if you're net cash flow negative, maybe you have to sell assets. You have to dip into your retirement account and sell some of those assets. You have to sell a collectible that you wanted to keep. Okay. Again, besides the kind of the pain of selling something that you valued, selling assets reduces assets, destroying your net worth. Okay. So once again, big mantra from this slide, we're going to want to run net cash positive. The steps are pretty straightforward. It's not hard. This is for your cash flow statement. To put it together, step one, you're just going to record all your income from all your sources. Okay. For most people, the primary source is going to be work, what we would call your salary, payday. But you can earn income from lots of other sources. You can earn it from interest if you've saved money in the bank, dividends if you own some stocks. If you're retired, you might get money from a pension or from Social Security. Or, maybe you take what's called a draw from your IRA account. So there a draw or distribution. So there's lots of sources of income. But for the majority of you, when you're young and working, it's your salary. Okay. You're then going to want to record all your expenses. Step three, once you've recorded your expenses, we're going to categorize them so that we can put them into the categories on our cash flow statement. Remember that we had taxes and withholdings, your pay yourself first, your fixed expenses, and your variable expenses, which are usually organized by pretty standardized categories: food, shelter, transportation, travel, things like that. And then finally, once you've got the money in and the money out, you subtract it, you get your net cash flow, and hopefully you celebrate because you got net cash flow positive. If you had a bad month and you ran net cash flow negative, well, that's okay sometimes. But the big thing is that you then reflect on it. Okay. And that's the other thing I wanted to say to you too. If you notice, besides all of this stuff, in each of these statements, I put some reflection questions. I had said earlier that these statements can help you to start thinking of a financial mindset. So I wanted to share with you some questions that maybe you can ask, that you can reflect on, so that you start to develop a financial mindset, and that these tools start to really make you smarter and a better financial thinker. Okay. So that's what that is. All right. We already said this, but one more time, if we want to connect our cash flow statement to our balance sheet, we just have to remember that positive cash flows, net cash flow positive, will increase your net worth. Once again, a good thing. net cash negative by either increasing debt or destroying assets will erode your net worth. There is one last thing on this, though, that I must say. A lot of times people would say, okay, these first two bullets look good. I have check marks there and there. I understand this. So if I have net cash positive, I can buy any asset that I want and they'll all help me. And it's not quite that easy, because another subtlety about assets, not all assets are alike. In terms of their behavior, we had our three categories, right? Cash assets, property assets, and investment assets. They all are assets, but they're really sort of different. They're obviously different in terms of their liquidity. They're also different in terms of their risk or their safety. You know, if you have $10,000 in the bank, it'll be worth $10,000 a month and a year from now. Now, there's some inflation issues, which we'll learn about later, but if you have $10,000 in the bank as cash, it's going to stay at $10,000. So it's fairly safe. If you have $10,000 in stocks or mutual funds, it might be worth a lot more than $10,000 if the market grows, or it could be worth a lot less than $10,000 if the market contracts. So there's a lot more volatility, a lot more risk involved there. Okay. And then, of course, tied to that is the issue of growth potential. Okay. So just bear in mind that not all assets are alike. Cash assets tend to be safe. They stay equal in value. Good. Personal property assets tend to depreciate. Your car is worth less today than the day that you bought it. My computer is worth less today than the day that I bought it. Okay, so cash assets stay the same in value. Property assets tend to depreciate in value. Now, houses are different. Real estate tends to go up, but for your other personal property assets, cars, collectibles, you know, your guitar, baseball cards, your clothes, your computer, those are going to fall in value. We call that depreciation. And investment assets tend to grow in value. So what's the key here? Well, you want to run net cash flow positive, so you have options. And then what you really want to do is deploy that cash primarily into investments. All things equal, it's better to put money into assets that will grow in value as opposed to assets that will decline in value. Okay, so just bear in mind here that not all assets are alike. And one of your goals in life should be not just to increase your net worth, which is a big goal, but now that we're thinking about this, another goal for you should be get to a point where you're putting more and more and more of your free cash into assets. Or how about this? If you think about your net worth as a pie chart, you want a bigger and bigger and bigger slice of that pie chart to be investment assets, and the smaller and smaller part to be cash and property assets. That's the best way that you're going to grow your portfolio. Okay. All right. A couple of really quick things. We learned that these financial statements can do a lot for us. Another thing that they can do for us is give us snapshots on how we're doing. And the way that we do that in accounting and finance is through what's called ratio analysis. You can take your financial statements and you can take different lines from them, because each line tells a little different part of the story. And by finding the ratio of one number to the other number, you get a better sense of what you're doing on certain metrics. Okay, so we call this ratio analysis. I'm going to teach you quickly 4 of them. 2 of them will come from the balance sheet. So the first ratio that you want to know about is called your liquidity ratio, also called your current ratio. Your liquidity ratio is equal to your total liquid assets. This is from your balance sheet up on the top, divided by your current liabilities. Your liquidity ratio is your total liquid assets divided by your current liabilities. What does this tell us? Well, it basically says, do you have enough cash to cover your upcoming debts? Okay. So ideally, this liquidity ratio should be greater than 1. That means that you have enough liquid assets to cover your liabilities. It's a good thing. Now, that's obvious. Here's another question, though. When it comes to your liquidity ratio, having some liquidity is obviously good, but is higher and higher and higher liquidity ratios necessarily better? And the answer might surprise you. It comes down in part to your own risk threshold, but some people would argue that you don't want your liquidity ratio to get too high. Because if your liquidity ratio is too high, it means that you might be sitting on too much cash. Now, you might just say, but Eric, you just spent some time talking about rainy days and things like that. How can I hold too much cash? Well, if you're sitting on too much cash, you're foregoing the opportunity. We call that in econ the opportunity cost. You're foregoing the opportunity of putting some of that cash into investments. Because remember, the cash will stay level of value, but investments will grow in value. So it may be possible to have too much cash. Okay. There's also, number 2, your debt to asset ratio. This is equal to your total liabilities, not your current, but your total liabilities divided by your total assets. Okay. Those are some balance sheet ratios. There's also 2 important ratios that we can pull from the cash flow statement. The first one, so this will be our third of our 4 ratios, is the savings ratio. And your savings ratio is going to be equal to your savings during the period divided by your disposable income in that period. Another way to say that is basically it's your cash surplus. Oops, that got erased. There it is. It's your cash surplus divided by your disposable income. One of the best things that you can do as you start your journey is to set a target ratio. I think a nice, safe place to start for most people, you should aim initially for a 10% savings ratio, a 10% savings rate. This means that you're committing 1 out of every $10 of your disposable income to future you. That's hard. That means that current you has to make some sacrifices, but future you will thank you for it. And then the final one that I'll offer to you, the 4th and final ratio, would be our debt service ratio. This is defined as your total monthly loan payments divided by your total monthly gross income. The debt service ratio is basically a ratio looking at how much money are you paying out to people who have future claims on your income as a fraction of how much money you're bringing in. So that's what that ratio is showing. Obviously, lower is better. And if you have no debt, this is a 0 because you have no loan payments. This debt service ratio, though, is really a canary in a coal mine, as it were. It's a potential warning. I would offer to you that the maximum that you want here is 35%. Lower is better. But if you're going to take on debt, you must strive to keep your debt service ratio below 35%. Because think about it. Suppose that you had a debt service ratio of 35%. Well, you're already going to be paying out, I don't know, maybe 15, 20% in taxes to the government. And then you're paying out 35%, let's say, to other people. This might leave you with less than half of your income, and you haven't even paid your rent yet. So again, we're seeing the impact that debt has on your options. And hopefully you're able to now put these together with the bigger idea of your statements and your goals and the importance of having assets and liabilities in a managed way. Okay. So anyway, that's your 4 ratios. Now, we've discussed where you want to go. We've discussed now and had a lot of different things where you are. We learned some tools for the job, the financial statements. Now that we have that, we put it together and we get our roadmap. Where we are, where we're going are connected by the personal financial plan. This is a very, very simple. It can be very simple. It can be complicated. Yours can be simple. It's very comprehensive and it's very personal, and it does several really important things. First and foremost, your plan will lay out your financial goals and indicate where you stand. It will then identify, this is where you do the deep thinking based on the stuff that you'll learn in this class and in your own reading. You will identify the tools and services and products that you will take advantage of to help you achieve your goals. 529 plan, a Roth IRA, insurance, all these different tools that you have to help you achieve your goals. In addition, because there's a lot of temptation to make bad decisions, a good financial plan not only opens up the door to the things that you will do, it also closes the door to things that you don't want to do. This financial plan, this number 4, is critical. You say to yourself, hey, listen, there's some risky investments. I'm just not going to go that way. There are certain things I'm not going to do. Well, once you've got that written down, it makes it a lot easier to say no when the temptations are high. Okay. And then finally, it's all about action. Your financial plan will lay out the actions that you're going to take to get from here to there, hopefully in alignment with your values and your visions, so that you can create a great life for a beautiful future you. Okay. This good financial plan, therefore, is strategic. It's flexible. It evolves over time, and it's a roadmap to your success. I have another document here, again, on the website for you, where I've outlined the different components of your financial plan. I've put 12, a few are optional, but at its core, your financial plan should start off with a statement of your vision, your values, and your goals. It should also include where you stand now by detailing your current net worth, your cash flow, and your budget plans. It should then have a series of smaller little sections where you outline the individual plans for how you're going to manage your cash and your debt, handling taxes, your investment philosophy. That's a big one. Your investment plan and your investment philosophy, your roadmap for growing your wealth. And then also plans for insurance and retirement. And because our time on earth is limited, what we call estate management, which is the plan for how all of your assets will be handled when you die, so that they are taken care of in a responsible way that allows you to look after the people that you love when you die. Okay. And then in addition, some people optionally put in some other plans for the big purchases, buying that first house or a second house or a car, plans to fund your kids' educations, and for many people, charity plans. Okay. So these are all the things that you can do with a good financial plan. Okay. Couple last lingering things, and then we'll wrap up this lecture. I want to briefly address a budget. Don't be afraid of it. We just learned a moment ago how simple a cash flow statement was. You recorded your income, you record all your expenditures, you organize them. That's your cash flow statement. If you think about it, a cash flow statement looks backwards. What did I just do in the month that passed? Don't be afraid of a budget, because all a budget is, it's just a cash flow statement that projects a period of time in the future. That's all it is. In this class, we're not going to start doing budgets right away. I'm not a big believer in doing budgets right away, because since a budget is in fact a projected cash flow statement, I think that to do good budgeting, you have to have good information. And that means that maybe for a couple of months, you're going to want to start tracking all your spending and doing your personal financial statements, including your cash flow. Once you've done a couple of cash flow statements, then you'll have a better idea, a more realistic idea of where your money comes in from and where it goes to. And then you can use that knowledge to develop a really good budget. One of the biggest issues that people have when they start doing personal finance is they say, I'm going to do a budget right away. Great, sounds good. But what if you don't have any idea of where you actually spend? So then you're going to do this budget, be really optimistic, really enthusiastic. And then after a month, you're going to realize, oh my God, my real spending. Okay. We call that your actual spending compared to your budgeted. Okay. In budgeting, we have the budgeted amount, we have the actual amount, and any difference is what we call the variance. Okay. If you were to try to do a budget without having ever done a cash flow, you might be setting yourself up for a bit of a failure. We don't want that. Because you say, okay, suppose you have no idea where your money actually goes. You set up this great budget, but it's not founded in reality. It's just kind of ideal. And then you have your actual spending. And when you do your variance, you say, oh my God, I blew it this month. And that's when the self-doubt starts creeping in. You get mad at yourself. You get mean to yourself. And then in the worst case, you say, you know what? I knew it. I've never been good at math. I'm just going to give up. And you don't want to give up. So we're going to start off by doing several monthly cash flow statements. This will give us some data that gives us an accurate sense of money in and money out. And once you have a better idea of your own situation and your own goals, then you can make a budget that works for you and that guides you to those goals. Okay? Finally, let's wrap up where we started, the metaphor of the journey and the metaphor of the path. I really want you to think about this class as a journey and of financial planning as your map. Why should we really think about this? Why is this class so important? Well, because financial planning allows you to do a lot of things. To manage your ongoing needs right now. To anticipate and prepare for life's both planned and unplanned future events. To save for your goals so that you can live a full life. And as you move through your life into and out of jobs, maybe into a marriage and family, maybe into retirement, as you have these big inflection points, these big life change points, good financial planning ensures that you're ready for those. And that's a good thing, because as you open up new chapters in this book of your life, you don't want to be afraid. You don't want to be scared. You don't want to be paralyzed by the fear of what's going to happen. You want to embrace that. You want to have a plan, say, I've thought this through and I'm ready. I've got my ducks in a row. I've got my money lined up. I'm going to do great in this next step. Okay. So ultimately, what good financial planning does, it's not about money. It's about you as a human. Good financial planning allows you to flourish, to meet your goals, and to ultimately, in the short time that we're here, to live a responsible, purposeful, and meaningful life. And that's really why we start this lecture with the goals and with kind of this like life coaching idea. Because ultimately, good financial planning, it's not about the dollars in the bank. It's about all the great things you can do for yourself and the people that you love with those dollars in the bank. Okay. And that's what life and finance are all about. Okay. Ultimately, if you want to do good financial planning, You need action across 4 areas. I tend to categorize all of personal finance as activities within 4 buckets. There's really only 4 buckets of activity, 4 broad functional areas. Number 1, you have to earn money. This is your career. Okay. So the first bucket of financial planning is earning money. You have to earn it. Number 2, you have to use your money prudently, wisely, prudently. You have to use your money prudently on a day-to-day basis. It's critical. This implies things like having your budget in place and having your taxes organized and having your net cash flow positive and understanding the principles of debt management and interest rates and banking. Kind of boring stuff. But again, it's a critical bucket. You've got to earn the money. Then you have to use it well on a day-to-day basis. Of course, ideally running net cash flow positive. The third bucket, you want to grow your money. And this is investing. And then the final bucket, you have to protect the money. And this is insurance. So financial planning requires that you think about your life in 4 broad buckets. You got to earn money, use it well on a day-to-day basis, grow it through investing, and protect it through insurance. And then on top of those, you have to think. When you think, and this was that financial mindset that I kind of hinted at earlier, you want to be thinking about things. Some of them are internal and some of them are external. The external things they're sort of simple and they're kind of easy because you can't control them. But you have to be thinking at least about things like interest rates, the labor market. If you're going to get a certain degree and go into a certain occupation, what's that labor market like? Things like inflation, things like external financial or technical innovations that can affect your trajectory. So you can't control these, but you still want to be aware of them. These, if you've had economics before, these are like macroeconomic factors. What's really important to think about, though, are the internal factors that you can control. And this would be, again, your goals, your values, your relationships with yourself and with future you, with your loved ones. And then even things like your personality. Because your personality will deep down influence how you view money, how you view investing. Are you a bit more risk taker, a bit more risk avoider? That's going to affect your investment philosophy, right? Do you see money as something that should be, that you're ashamed of? Do you see money as something that sets you apart and defines who you are? Do you see money as simply a tool to achieve your goals? That personality thing is going to really shape your view of how you take this journey. Okay. So ultimately then, as we wrap this up, I want you to achieve financial security. To do that, you need to know a lot. You need to think a lot. You need to take action. You need to avoid dumb mistakes. If you can do that, you're on the path to financial security. I'm going to end this lecture with this. Take action. Whenever it's appropriate to the lecture, we're going to end every discussion that we have with a call to action. Personal finance is one of those disciplines that can't just live in a textbook or in your notes or on a whiteboard in a traditional classroom. It lives in the real world. So you need, and I put it here, you need to take action. All the theories that we learn, all the little, mottos that I place in your head, all the tools for the job, they mean nothing if they just stay in your notes. You have to take action. Good financial planning is rooted in action. I offer to you respectfully some actions that you might want to start taking in the upcoming weeks so that you can build a solid foundation for you and for future you. What actions can you take? Number one, develop a system to track your spending and to calculate your net worth. Systematize this. Number two, do a quick inventory and calculate the value of all of your assets and your liabilities. Figure out where you stand right now with your net worth. Number three, get the right tools for the job. If you already have these, you're great. But if not, you're going to need a checking account, a high yield savings account, a good credit card, and your emergency fund account. These are the four basic tools that you need. They form like the architecture of your system. If you currently have bills that recur over time, automate that bill pay. And along with automating bill pay, when you start contributing money to your savings and emergency fund accounts, automate that as well. Let's be honest, we're humans. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to forget things. It's easy to fool ourselves. Automation is our defense against fooling ourselves. So whenever possible, automate your systems. Take the human error factor out of it. Number six, write out a budget. You can wait on this one until you've got your cash flows done. Number seven, get properly insured. Rainy days happen. Life might throw you a curveball. You've got to get properly insured. If you're eligible, number eight, meaning you have a job, open a retirement account through your employer, like a 401k or a 401k or a 403b. If you don't have a job, but you have other sources of income, open up your own personal IRA account. IRA, your individual retirement account, your IRA, and start investing in that. In terms of managing your credit, I'll teach you some ways to request a free credit report and a free credit score. You're going to want to know these really important numbers because they give you a baseline on where you can grow. And then finally, you got to think. Action can be thinking too. Think about and maybe write about for your own self your relationship with money. Do you think it's healthy? Is it flawed? Can you improve it? And then going back to the first slide we had today, start thinking about your goals, personal goals, financial goals across all the time frames. Okay, you do that and you'll be looking good. That's the end of our lecture for today. Thanks for sticking with me. You have some homework to do, as it were, some take action. So start thinking about those things, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.